parental equality, and he has a million parent march, and it's a great show, and it's a great organization. It's also we'll be hearing a little bit more about him. Good morning, Ted. How we doing?
I'm good. How are you, Paul?
Everything's fine on this end. How's everything on the Eastern Front?
Things are good up here. Yeah. Thanks for having me on your show.
No, thanks for being in there and leading this fight. And a lot of parents, both the father and mother, sometimes they're not the custodial parent, and they need more information. And people like you are the ones that are out there fighting for us all, And I was on one side of the fence, and I would always look across to the other side, and I would see a huge difference in the sense of why are they acting that way? Why are they arguing? Or is that person seem to be always in a slump? Well, now I crossed that fence myself several years ago, and you find out why, and for those fathers out there and mothers out there that love their kids, listen, hug them, give them a big old kiss, and tell them you love them every time you see them. And let's touch base a little bit about what co-parenting is and what happens in the courts and all that good stuff, because a lot of people out there have a lot of questions.
Well, I came into it the same way. I was a contractor, and I found myself in family court. And, not knowing the situation, you go into the court thinking that what is right, what is fair, what is just is going to happen. But in fact, you find yourself fighting just to be in your child's life. I mean, not even just equal, but even having some time sharing. You would imagine that the best interest of a child would be to have equal access to both parents. I mean, that's a fundamental right.
Correct.
But the courts, what the family courts have done is they've put themselves in a place that really shouldn't exist. That all of this could have been solved in 1970, but since it wasn't, this institution called family court came to fruition. It's almost like, it's almost like we're living in a parallel universe to what should be happening. That's how wrong it is. I mean, it's right now, family court, I'll say judges, I'm not saying they're all wrong, but currently family court judges are breaking the law every 8 seconds in this country. 8 seconds.
8 seconds. How would you go by in explaining that? What will be the breaking of the law there? I mean, I've seen some shenanigans in my case that we're probably going back at it one more round, and it's not my ex dealing it. It's more the lawyers that come into this, and all of a sudden they create this chaos, and they pit one against the other. I understand. I understand that two people cannot get along anymore. Okay, and I also understand that some parents shouldn't have their kids because of the way they are. But I'm talking about rational folks, people that are normal. People that understand care, understand love, understand what parenting is, and they pit one against the other. And I've seen it. I'm experiencing that, and I'm with you with the judges. And here in Webb County, we got 2 judges that should be voted out of office, and because of
that.
They have to be voted out of office, period, because the whole scenario of the way they act towards fathers in comparison to the mothers is beyond belief.
Well, one thing that they need to, what legislators do is they need to create revenue. I mean, the institution called family court needs to create revenue. It gets that revenue from your Social Security money. Mainly, that revenue started ramping up in 1997 when the Clintons put in place Title 4A, Title 4D, and Title 4E, that's basically a reward system. You bring in child support money or foster care money, and we give you money as a reward from the American Social Security Fund. And right now, it's currently, for every dollar paid in child support, the state receives $1.66.
That's crazy.
So, I mean,
now
we're spending more. We're spending more of the American Social Security money than we're getting in child support, which doesn't make sense right off the bat. But here's how it works: is they have to show that they're getting this money in, otherwise they don't get it. So if you, as you know,
what do you mean they have to show?
Well, if you don't pay, they don't get their incentive money.
Okay.
Like, they can order you to pay. If you don't pay, they don't get it back. It's whatever money that's dispersed that they get their incentive from. That's what it's based on. And that's why they're sending people to jail for contempt. Modern day debtors' prisons are coming back after being outlawed 200 years ago.
You're absolutely correct, because and some of these, I call them shenanigans that occurs in these courts. The attorney general, or the child, especially here in Texas, the child support disbursement unit of the attorney general.
Right,
the state.
Attorney general.
A bunch of I've gone to the office here, and there's a bunch of goofballs that work there. And I'm serious. I mean, these guys do not know the difference between up or down or left, or they couldn't hold a job at McDonald's. I don't even know why they're in here. And I'm not putting down McDonald's at one bit. But what I'm trying to say is that when you talk to these people, they don't understand what's going on. They say things that are not.
Right.
They're not allowed to say. And I've experienced it. One time I was in there, and they said, I don't care what our policies are, that if the father comes in, we don't believe the father, we just have to believe the mother. I'm like, wait a minute, why am I here? You know what I'm saying?
You need to get that recorded.
Oh, I have it recorded. So in case we do go to court with them, I do have it recorded. And it's just ridiculous on what they've done. But tell us this, when a father or a mother finds himself in trouble in front of a judge, where the judge is not, how can I say, they understand that it's biased, number one, you can recuse them. What other things to get to the judge that the family court always obscures?
Okay. Well, if you're going in there for the first time, some things you're going to want to look at is civil law. Since you might even want to seek out a civil attorney and talk to them, not necessarily hire them. And I really don't suggest hiring a family court or a family law attorney. They know very little about your civil rights. They will turn a blind eye to the courts breaking the law every 8 seconds. Okay. See, the major things that are done in family court, since it's an illegal court, it's a court of equity, not a court of law. They don't follow the Constitution. They don't follow the law. So number one, they don't follow due process. And the second thing is they basically freely break your constitutional rights. For instance, gag orders. You cannot put a gag order on people, but the family courts do it constantly. If you get a gag order, you need to immediately go to the federal appellate court, the federal appeals court, the closest one to you, and appeal that. They have to see it, since it's a First Amendment right, and it's usually thrown away.
And what are gag orders, number one?
Gag orders are like if you're posting stuff on Facebook and the judge says, I don't want you saying anything about this on Facebook or anything about this to anybody. He can't tell you to do that. That's your First Amendment right.
Okay.
He can't stop you. No judge can stop you from talking about anything you're going through. You're going through a lawless court of equity, and you're trying to fathom what is going on here. Of course, you're talking to people.
Correct.
The judges, what the court needs to do, they need to create more revenue. They can't see that revenue stream go down. That revenue not only has to remain the same, it has to go higher and higher and higher. So they're charging more for child support, and they're creating more non-custodial parents where there doesn't need to be any non-custodial parents. Being a parent is a fundamental right. It's just like, it's just, you grow hair. Nobody can tell you to cut your hair.
Correct.
You have children. That's what makes us human. There wouldn't be people if we didn't have children. So being a parent is a fundamental right. Nobody has jurisdiction over that. Nobody can take away your right to be a parent. Nobody can take away a fundamental right.
But yet,
that's the bottom line here.
But yet they make a lot of fathers visitors in the heartbeat, and that
they do. And that's where the profit comes in, and that's where no-fault divorce comes in. If they put in a procedure that was already in place in 1970 as mandatory, we wouldn't be going through this right now. But, most politicians are lawyers, and lawyers are not going to create a law that doesn't benefit lawyers. No. Lawyers can't create laws that benefit the people, but put them out of business. You know what I mean?
Understood.
So they created no-fault divorce, even though fault or action for divorce is found to be unconstitutional. I agree with that. The problem, what happened when they created no-fault divorce is they didn't put a procedure in how to go about the divorce. They just said that you could get a divorce for whatever reason. So now, went before a judge having done something. You had to go through due process to prove whether or not somebody abused you or neglected you.
Correct.
Now you're doing nothing. And that is the complete opposite of what Benjamin Franklin wanted when we created our legal system. Our legal system was based on due process.
Exactly right.
That is numero uno.
That's exactly
numero
right.
uno. If there's no reason to be in front of a judge, you should not be there. Period. There's a simple way to circumvent this. These things need to be figured out before you get married. When you get married, what do you do with future kids? What do you do with future assets? These things should be figured out while you're still in love, not when you want to kill each other. Let's say, automatically, being a parent is a fundamental right. Therefore, you have 50-50 equal custody of your children no matter what. That shouldn't even be an option in this contract that should exist instead of family court. Beyond that, houses, cars, property, money, whatever can be split however you guys want. These things shouldn't be figured out when you're at each other's throats. These things can be figured out beforehand. But the reason why it's not is there's no way to make money off it. Lawyers benefit off division in court. If they didn't, they wouldn't exist. And that's why usually you will see relationships get worse while the divorce is happening.
Oh, of course, because you go in there and they're picking at a wound and they're re-bleeding it, and that happens. And I saw that with mine. And and I'll show it. I'll put an experience out there. When we went into a divorce, we went into it as equally as we could.
Mm-hmm.
We had drafted up our own. How can I put it? You get them 1 week, I get them the other week, and so on and so forth. Let's cut everything down in 50-50 and everything else. And all of a sudden, I come out of it with just extended visitation rights. And I told my attorneys, what happened with all this? And it was the shenanigans of one attorney that was just every time you went in front of the judge, he had redrafted up a new, how can I put it, a new decree that had nothing to do with what we had agreed before final divorce hearing. So for them to sign on my decree, it took them about close to 2 years. And I found out something real quick, and I mean, you're going back in there and you're getting feelings and frustrations and so on and so forth, and all of a sudden you start understanding what parental alienation is, and hopefully you can talk a little bit about that. And then you find yourself that you actually do not have any rights, because we had a situation and all of a sudden a scene was caused, and here I am smiling, and a police officer comes up and he says, "Do you have your decree?" And I go, "It hasn't been signed." He goes, "And you don't have any rights for your child." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
And when you go back and explain it to the court, they all started laughing, like, "Oh, well, this is something that your problem kind of thing is." And to me,
they want to make each person feel like this is only happening to them.
Correct.
Or they need to alienate you from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you'll understand that this is wrong, what they're doing. And that's part of the reason why parental alienation isn't something that's mandatory to be certified or mandatory to understand in family court, because they know that if it does become mandatory, we can turn around and point the finger at them for initiating alienation in most cases.
And to me, I blame the judges. The ones that start parent alienation are those that are wearing the black robe. Those are the ones that are actually starting it.
They initiate most of it, and but there's a couple of, when you say parental alienation, that is definitely in most cases initiated by the courts.
Correct.
So there's another term for it called pathogenic parenting, and that's where the parent truly is the alienator.
Correct. And I understand.
Like when you see, like Switzerland, for instance, they have pretty much equal custody.
Correct.
In that country, but parental alienation is still going strong. So when I went to the Parental Alienation Symposium in Dallas this last May, there was a group from Sweden there. It was really interesting to talk to them, and they're trying to find a solution to this, because there's no laws anywhere about it. But and a lot of people in the United States are trying to make it, make the DSM-5, the psychology community, make it something that is recognized.
To
by
me,
psychology.
And it needs to be, and I think some do recognize it, and some don't, and some say it really doesn't happen. But when one was growing up, you'll see your cousin, and if his parents were divorced, half the family was against the ex-spouse. And to me, that was parent alienation. But so there's two types. There's a type that whether one parent really tries to alienate the child from the father or for the mother, and from the other, right? And what happens is that don't talk to them on the phone, don't go here, or they'll cause whatever type of scene for that other parent not to see their child, right? And also what I've seen is parents, whether father or mother, talk bad about the other parent. That to me was what I thought parent alienation really was. And it's still there, but now what I've seen is actually laws that actually prevent one father from going up against the other.
Yeah.
Well, one parent going up against the other,
Yeah. I mean, if the courts told you up front what was going to happen, you wouldn't spend a penny in there. Because you're fighting against a decision that's already been made.
Right.
The courts are going to create a non-custodial parent. If they don't, they'll go out of business.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
I am all for co-parenting. You have to be.
Yeah.
I am for co-parenting 100%. And the child needs the mother as well as it needs the father, and they should be in equal terms. You can't just push one aside from the other. But go ahead.
No, I agree with you completely. It needs to be an equal relationship between mother and father. And
there are some instances that one parent moves out of state and so on and so forth, and you need those laws to, you can't have 50-50 kind of thing, but it's
right.
There's a lot of different situations when you have parents that live in the same place and and so on and so forth. And I've also seen, this is what I've seen here a lot. I've seen one parent goes into court, and all of a sudden, bingo, that father has a peace bond nailed to him. And he is kicked out of the house, and all of a sudden, guess what? He's living out of his car or in a hotel room trying to find his way while they're going into a divorce. Why? Because they got some kind of protection order over him. And that silver bullet really, they remove their rights right off the bat, and it's already on the mother's side. And that also has to stop, I guess. But
yeah, that's when you really need to be talking to a civil rights attorney. You need to know your civil rights, know the difference between certain things, know the difference between your civil rights and your constitutional rights. All of these things you have, but the family courts won't recognize any of it. If you can bring a civil rights attorney into family court, the judge will sit up straight because he knows he has somebody who knows what's going on in front of him.
Right.
He has to watch himself. Family court attorney, family law attorney, probably knows the judge, probably went to the same law or works at, the judge probably worked in the law firm that this guy went to work at or this guy did work at. These people really know each other. And it comes down, the biggest factor behind even the judges are the law firms, where these judges came from, and whether or not they're still working as lawyers for those law firms. Because in most states, a judge can work as a judge and a lawyer at the same time, not while they're in court being a judge, but could literally walk out of court as a judge and then turn around and go make 5 times as much just turn a corner, take off the robe, and be somebody's attorney in the same courthouse. There's something seriously wrong with that, and you'll find a lot of family court attorneys acting like judges, and they absolutely can't. They have to be impartial. That's another violation of their code of conduct. But certain things that you want to do if you're finding yourself in court, you want to read up as much as you can, because you cannot rely on family court attorneys to do what is right. They're caught up in the same system that are going to create a non-custodial parent. They'll try a little bit to make the judge think that the other one should be the non-custodial parent, but they're never going to get out of there with 50-50 custody.
Right. And I've always seen,
currently.
And it usually goes, the father's the one that becomes a non-custodial parent. And why is there any studies on why or reasonings on why or that's usually happening?
Yeah, there's a lady, Jennifer Hamilton, I think that's it. She was on TED Talks recently, and it's the only TED Talks that talked about anything to do with family court, and it was what I mentioned earlier when we were talking privately about, the gender roles.
Mm-hmm.
The man works and the mother stays at home. This is stuff that's based on notions back in Action for Divorce, back pre-1970.
Correct.
Which is the same thing. People's mentality about why you're in front of a judge at all is back before no-fault divorce as well. Well, and in divorce court, you must have done something wrong. If you're in a courtroom, you must have done something wrong. But it's that those gender roles that people perceive, and that doesn't stop in any courtroom. Those same perceptions are the same perceptions as every judge, every lawyer. They have the same ones we all do. They're no different. They're not unbiased like they're supposed to be. Nobody can be, 5 days a week, all day, every day, around the clock. That's just not human nature. So that's why we saw, 80, I think it was 84% males becoming the non-custodial parent. Recently, because of the uptick in incentive money and this necessity to have a non-custodial parent above everything else, there is no definition of what's in the child's best interest. That is not a defined term. They will use that as a blanket statement to create a non-custodial parent because they need money to run the institution called family court. But what's happened is you've seen in the last 5 years more and more mothers becoming the non-custodial parent. But it's still way heavier on the father's side.
Correct.
It's just easier.
Now you're talking about monies. Let's jump into that. You're talking about monies, incentives for the family court. Where are they reaching this out of? I know we talked about earlier in private about state attorney generals and what many say have to pay child support to the state. I'll refer to as that. Where are they getting their monies? You were telling me that they were getting them out of the Social Security or something to that effect. For every dollar, how much was it? Explain that, because many people do not understand where that money is going for.
Yeah. So it's the money that you pay that comes out of your check for Social Security, what you're supposed to retire.
Okay. So they're spending it on child support.
Correct. So you pay, instead of paying your ex-wife directly, it goes to the family court and is recorded. That money then gets dispersed, but at the same time, more money, because they're dispersing it for you, they receive your Social Security money as a reward. That's what was created in 1997.
And what do they do with that money that they're receiving? Do they give it to children, or they just pocket it into administration?
No, it keeps the institution going.
Yeah. We're
spending more on keeping the institution going than we are dispersing money. It's completely insane. And we can go further into other areas, because family court really sets the standards for all parental relationships,
correct,
whether you're married or not.
Right.
And if you're not married as a male, you're in even a worse situation. You have nothing, no rights, no fundamental rights to that child. It's bonkers. It's an even greater nightmare, actually, if you're a father in that situation, and that's easily changed too. But family court sets the standards. It's the same thing with foster kids.
Right.
It's almost as easy to create two non-custodial parents and have a absolutely 100% profit off a foster kid as it is to create one non-custodial parent. And that's when we're seeing an even greater disaster happen now. We're up to 24 million children growing up without a biological parent
That's
in
a
the
lot.
United States. It's really incredible. That's what the family court has done in the last 20 years.
You know, there's some. I'm going to say a story, nothing personal, but one that I was not counseling. I had befriended a father that lost his rights and so on and so forth, and he was going into the deep end. You know, he tried to grab. He was calling out for help, and I started talking to him about it.
Yeah.
Now, he's now getting switched jobs and so on and so forth. But he was at a point of suicide, and
Yep.
what happened was that he was married. That parent alienation was tremendous towards him. The courts went against him. He lost his job with the oil fields, and guess what? All of a sudden, he found himself in county jail, and
Yep.
just for missing 2 payments. Okay, and so when he went in there and he said, I want to fix it out there. So he spent time in jail, whatever it was, to pay for that. I think it was 3 months, 90 days. He came back and nobody wanted to hire him because he already had been in and out of jail. That kind of scenario.
Right.
So what I started seeing from him was he started saying, you should see the way they treat the kids. They're neglected left and right. And his voice, he tried to reach out and nobody would take care of him. The courts wouldn't pay attention to him. Nobody did.
No.
And that happens many times in every city across the United States and across the world, and I see now why we used to see beforehand when we were on the opposite side of the fence, a lot of fathers walking around kind of like you talk to them about their kids and they zone themselves out into some kind of la la land. And you say, is he really that cold-hearted, or did he just get tired of fighting, or just lost the fight, or was he beaten?
Well, it's interesting. You oil fields. There's a few stories that stick in my head, but it's the same thing with any work where you're not paid a salary, not paid the same as you go along. I was a contractor, so my income varied, and so you get a divorce, and the first thing they want you to do is
prove how much you make.
Want to see all your assets. And
Right.
how much does a divorce cost?
Yeah.
Whatever you have. So child support is on this sliding scale. It's supposed to be a percentage of what you make. But if you're like an oil field worker, you could be working 1 month and not working the next month. And so when you're not working, they don't care.
Right.
But when you're making more money, they do care.
Right.
And that's how people get in trouble really fast and end up being in debtor's prison,
Exactly.
legal
Right.
debtor's prison. Really, child support, no matter what the situation, if what I think should happen comes to fruition, and the universe goes back into alignment and everything's normal again, where family court does not exist, child support should be a fixed amount.
Correct.
It doesn't. A rich child doesn't need more money than a poor child. It costs the same to raise a child. You already have if you're a productive member of society, you already have a house and a car.
Right.
You don't need a better house or a better car when you have a child. Usually you don't buy a house with 1 bedroom. Usually you buy a house with 2 bedrooms.
Correct.
These things, the way they calculate child support and the fact that it's on a sliding scale is absolutely, it's unconscionable, really, how they come up with these figures. it should be a fixed amount. Alimony, that's different. That's a whole different bag of worms, and that should be based on whether you have kids, though. I don't think there should be any alimony for somebody if you had no kids to take care of. There's no reason why you didn't have a job.
Right.
Alimony should be based on how long you were out of the system or out of the
working
out
environment.
Of work,
right,
out of your professional area of expertise because of children. But child support should be a flat fee.
And how come nobody's brought that up, or if they have, how come they've never contested that?
People have. There's been a lot of bills. I've had quite a number of people on my show, the Million Parent March Live. I've met hundreds of people, and we've all talked about this. And, bills that look amazing are seen by everybody. They get changed and changed and changed until it doesn't mean anything. And the problem with creating a bill, the thing of it is, all these rights are all in the Constitution. Everything is already spelled out in the Constitution. And this court is an illegal court. It goes against the Bill of Rights. It goes against the Constitution. Family court is an illegal institution. Illegal. It should not exist. That's the bottom line. But I just went off on a tangent there.
No, but you're absolutely correct. But and if it doesn't exist, why does it exist, and how can we get it back to it not existing anymore?
Well, that's the thing, is people keep trying to make laws that are just they're not fixing the problem. That was the whole problem with the 90s. It's like, let's make everything better, but let's make no solutions to any of the problems. That's how we got the incentive program to begin with in 1997, and then again in 2002. There was another one, but that was with foster care. But the thing is we're trying to make a problem better. You can't, if you just make different ways, you cannot make a problem better. You cannot make family court better. This situation, the bottom line is, we shouldn't be in front of a judge for not doing anything. If you did something, if you are abusive or neglectful, that needs to go in criminal court. And that's another problem with family court, is a lot of these abuse allegations are staying in family courts where there's no due process. And that's how you get these situations that you described, the silver bullet. Because some of these real ones have not gone to criminal court, stay in family court, the family, it's created this twisted mess of a situation where a court of equity is going outside of its realm into civil and criminal. And that's where these should go. If the marriage contract should be a contract, not just a license, and that should go before a civil court.
And it actually is a contract. Both of you sign on the bottom line when you go to the district clerk to sign off that you want to get a marriage license. It's a license. Right. It's not something.
But what does it say? Does anybody really read it? The closest thing to a contract would be a prenuptial agreement, and I know, that's got a certain amount of. It's kind of taboo to even say the word. I don't know why that is, but what a prenup is basically an agreement on what's going to happen in the future. Right. And everybody should be doing that. That should be mandatory. If that was put in place in greater detail in 1970, we would not have the family court today.
Understood.
As simple as that.
Yeah, because you go in there first and say, what's going to happen with the children, what's going to happen with this, what's going to happen with everything else. Right. And at that time, you're cool-headed, you're thinking.
Exactly.
And not when you're already got some lawyer stabbing and picking on wounds and so on and so forth and making the problems bigger. And that's not where you get it, And later on in time, you see certain exes kind of come back into sensibility. But then you have some.
Oh, of course.
You have some that really never come down. They're gone, and
right.
Like I said before, co-parenting are for the sensible parents, or for the both parents that are rational about what's going on. If one is already off the deep end, there's nothing you can do about it. Just continue going forward. But there's.
Right.
Let me tell you this: I've gone to court and we've asked. And we said, this is what we want, and they won't put it there.
Oh, no, not if they're not profiting off of it, no.
It's ridiculous.
That's the thing is, once you're in court, they're in control. Neither of you have any more control. If you can stay out of court in the first place, do your child favor. Don't put the lawyers and judges' kids through college.
You're absolutely correct. Let me tell you one thing. There is no lawyer that cares more for your child than you. There's not one.
Right.
And they don't really.
Exactly.
Some of them they can't take care of their own kids, and they're in there defending the kids of others, and you're like, really? But what I'm saying is, they don't care. The judge doesn't care about you all there. They care about who's going to and I see this in judges. You see some judges that get appointed, and you see some judges that get elected. When they're in the campaign trail, they'll tell you everything. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to blah-blah. Once they get in the bench, because we've helped out in many campaigns, once they get in the bench, everything changes. Folks that you didn't even know that was around are the ones that are controlling them. And it just happens that way, most judges are politicians; they're not appointed. Most judges, in the family courts, they're politicians, right? So they come in there, singing and patting everybody in the back and saying hi to everybody every 4 years. And once they get in there, they forget what they told the community they were going to go in there for. That's to be fair.
Well, a lot of family court judges are appointed. There's a lady, Sandra Russini-Rucky, who was on the show, and her judge. The family of this person had been in politics for years.
Mm-hmm.
He got out of law school. He practiced law for 7 minutes before he was appointed family court judge.
Understood.
And then soon after that, he was on the Board of Judicial Discretion. This person who has 7 minutes of experience. Not only is he appointed family court judge, but he's on the Board of Judicial Discretion.
What state is that?
You know what? I can't remember off the top of my head. But most places, family court judges are appointed, not elected. It isn't until you become a circuit court judge in most states where that's an elected official. Because a lot of family court judges are magistrates. They're just lawyers.
You have
really
here it kind of goes into county court first, and then if not, it goes into district. Then they'll throw you into family and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, so my case was in Florida, and I think I only saw one magistrate more than once. Every time I went in there was somebody new.
Right.
That makes it even more difficult. And that's why if there's a point you need to make to your judge or magistrate when you're going into court, if you are going into court and you have no other choice, if you can stay out, great. But if there's something you need the judge to know, there's a thing called a formal notification. Formal notice.
All right.
And so you take just like the regular header that you see on all your other court documents with the name of the court, your case number, your name, your ex's name, plaintiff, defendant, or respondent, and you set it up just like that. That leaves you with about a half a page.
Okay.
Whatever you need the judge to know, that's the space you have, is that half a page. If there isn't a blank piece of paper on the back, or if they see a staple, you might as well not write it at all, because they won't read it. If it's something short, a point that you need to make, like, I need to talk about this when I'm in front of you, then they'll know about it. It won't be a surprise to them.
Can you do that without, if you have an attorney? Because some attorneys are, they really don't do stuff like that,
No, family, here's the thing. Honestly, if you're going to go to family court, here's what you want to do. You're going to want to represent yourself, honestly, but you have to do it the right way. And most of us aren't going to have the time to know how to do this. I mean, there's nobody who tells us what to do. The best thing you can do for yourself is go to courts, watch some of these court proceedings, watch for yourself. If you can get into a family court, an open court where you can go in and watch, go in there for yourself and see how ridiculous it is. Do that. Go to the law library. Meet with a civil attorney. Tell them what you're going through and what your worries are. But if you can represent yourself as pro per or pro se, and there's a specific form you need to fill out saying that you're going to represent yourself. This is something that you can ask the clerk of court or go to the law library and find these forms. But if you're going to represent yourself, what you're doing is you're saying that you are your own person. You do not need somebody else to speak for you. Basically what the form says, that means that whatever you say is as good as an attorney's, but you do not have to be held to the same standard as an attorney. So
Okay.
They need to give you some leeway since you haven't been to law school.
Understood.
But you're saying that you're intelligent enough to represent yourself. At that point you have a lot of leeway. You can start using your civil rights a lot more, representing yourself a lot better than a family law attorney can. Or if you have the money to hire a civil rights attorney, a civil attorney, you're much better off that way too. But my best advice is to talk to an attorney. Make sure you file that form stating that you are pro se or pro per, and then get in that habit of filing these things yourself. If there's something specific that you need to talk to the judge about on your day in front of him, basically you're writing him a note, a formal notice. That notice goes into your file. The judge will look at it if it's very short. And I'm not saying tell him every word that you're going to say. Just tell him, I need you to be aware of this. This is what I'll be talking to you about.
Right.
Keep it as short as possible. Because I'm telling you, if it's more than that half a page,
It's not going
they
to be
will
read.
never look at it. I mean, I sent my financial affidavit in for my business, and my magistrate said, "You can't expect me to look at all of that."
We had one judge that kept on for about a year. Well, I haven't read the decree, but I will give you another 40 days and come back and I'll read it. And then you show up, oh, I didn't read it again. That kind of play.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
And that's just the way it is. And if they're not reading what is sent in front of them, imagine a note as well. But yeah, you're
Right.
What you just said is important. I want to thank you for those pearls, and I want to thank you for standing up and fighting this fight, because there's a lot of fathers out there that have been beaten, and there's a lot of mothers out there that have been beaten, and they can't fight anymore. And I'm with you on this, and you're having your 1 million parent march, and when is it?
It's this September the 16th.
And where is it going to be at?
18th, basically. It's in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. And folks, if you have any questions, place them down here or ask them, and Ted or I can direct you where you all should be going in the question. And Ted's on Gloves Off page as well as a group, so you all have any questions, please contact him. And Ted, I want to thank you dramatically. Thanks for standing up.
You're very welcome, Paul. Anytime. Thank you.
And we'll come back again. We'll touch base on some other legal issues that are coming up. Okay? And I want to thank you again. Plan. All righty. Stay safe. Keep your head up.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Now, next Thursday, keep on. And I kind of lost a little bit. And what I want to say is, if you're a father or a mother out there and you're going through this, keep your head up. There's people out there that are fighting that fight, and this is something that we have to take care of, and that's our children. Until next time, see you at Gloves Off.